End the welfare state, the only fix for immigration. Core thesis from anarcho-capitalist radical objectivist algorist lens in a fully consistent anarcho-capitalist order grounded in radical objectivist epistemology and ethics. There is no immigration problem as framed by states, only the predictable distortions created by coercive monopoly institutions, the state, interfering with voluntary human action, private property, and rational self-interest. The single, necessary, and sufficient solution is the complete abolition of the welfare state, and by extension, the fiscal apparatus that funds it. All of the proposed solutions, border walls, quotas, vetting bureaucracies, deportation forces, are symptomatic treatments that expand state power, violate rights, and fail algorithmically because they ignore root incentives and property logic. Epistemological foundation, objectivist radical reason. Ayn Rand's objectivism demands concepts formed by objective reality, not floating abstractions or emotional tribalism. Immigration is not an intrinsic evil or collective blessing. It is individuals crossing geographic lines in pursuit of values. The problem emerges only when forced taxation subsidizes migrants who consume more resources than they produce under current distorted incentives. Radical objectivist rejects altruism. No one has a duty to support strangers via the state. It also rejects collectivist nationalism that treats culture or genetics as mystical group rights overriding individual rights. Rational egoism governs. Each person acts to sustain their own life and happiness. Private property and contract are the objective mechanisms for association. An algorist extension applies clear, rule-based logic, like clean code or decision trees. Define inputs, human action, property boundaries, constraints, non-aggression, voluntary exchange, and optimize for emergent order. Welfare introduces a massive negative externality loop, predictable by simple incentive algorithms. Economic and incentive analysis, anarcho-capitalist. Welfare as magnet and distortion. In a welfare state, borders become semi-permeable membranes with asymmetric incentives. Low productivity individuals gain access to coerced transfers, housing, food, healthcare, education, funded by taxpayers. This violates the homesteading and property principles central to anarcho-capitalism, Rothbardian. High productivity immigrants are net positive in free markets but get lumped in with the subsidized. Result, fiscal drain, wage suppression in low-skilled sectors, and cultural friction from unassimilated dependency clusters. Data patterns, even if imperfectly measured under statism, consistently show higher welfare usage among recent low-skilled cohorts in Western welfare states. Private property trumps open borders dogma. True anarcho-capitalism has no open borders in the statist sense. Borders are private property lines, roads, communities, HOAs, and landlords decide entry via contract. A migrant must secure sponsorship, employment, or housing voluntarily, or face exclusion. No taxpayer fund public spaces or services mean to no free rider problem. Employers bear the full cost or gain and their labor choices. This is algorithmic purity. Voluntary signals sort people efficiently, price, reputation, insurance, private security. Abolition mechanics dismantle all transfer programs. No more Social Security, Medicaid, unemployment, public schooling, or housing subsidies. Taxation theft shrinks dramatically, increasing real wages and opportunity. Charity becomes private, targeted, and conditional. Churches, mutual aid societies, or family networks. Migrants internalize costs. They must produce or leave. Historical analogs, 19th century America with minimal welfare showed high immigration with rapid assimilation and net gains. Counter to common objections, cultural destruction. Cultural is not a state asset. In free societies, rational individuals select values. Bad ideas fail in competitive marketplaces of ideas and goods. Subsidized failure sustains dysfunctional subcultures. Welfare for citizens only. This requires massive surveillance state, ID cards, registries, enforcement agencies creating new rights violations and black markets. It fails the Algorist test. Complex, high-friction rules versus simple property rules. National security. Private defense agencies and insurance markets handle threats far better than conscripted militaries with potential incentives. Most terrorism risk traced to welfare-fueled parallel societies or foreign policy blowback. They'll just work off books. Without welfare, the incentive flips. Formal integration becomes valuable for reputation and capital accumulation. Ethical and rights-based analysis, radical objectivism. The welfare state is institutionalized altruism and looting. It initiates force against producers to fund non-producers, violating the objectivist virtue of justice, rational evaluation of individual merit, forcing students to subsidize immigrants or anyone treats people as means, not ends. Immigrants have no right to welfare. Natives have no right to block peaceful movement on unowned or private-only land. The only consistent right is to act freely, provided one respects others' property. Abolishing welfare restores justice. Every individual bears responsibility for their choices. Rational self-interest encourages productive immigration while filtering the dependent. Systemic emergent order view, Algorist. Think of society as a complex adaptive system. Welfare injects a subsidy distortion at massive scale. A tractor state of dependency migration plus political clientism. Votes for more welfare. Remove the subsidy node. System re-equilibrates toward productivity sorting. Private law, arbitration, reputation networks, insurance underwriting emerges as superior algorithms for risk management. Historical stateless or minimal state pockets, frontiers, special economic zones demonstrate faster convergence to high trust, high productivity equilibria. Partial reforms fail. Border control plus welfare grows the state. Open borders plus welfare accelerates collapse. Only full abolition is stable and rights respecting. Transition realities. Abolition wouldn't be overnight chaos. Phase out creates immediate market signals. Wages rise for low-skilled work. Private charity targets genuine need. Fail migrants self-deport via economic pressure. Capital inflows accelerate as tax burdens fall. Long-term, a polycentric legal order of competing defense and arbitration agencies handles disputes without monopoly bureaucracy. Why this is the only solution. All other paths require the state to define who belongs, what culture is acceptable, and how much productivity is enough. Arbitrary rights violating and computational intractable knowledge problem plus public choice incentives, property plus voluntary contract plus zero coerced transfer is the minimal. Sufficient rules set. It aligns incentives with reality. This framework rejects both progressive, open borders forever, altruistic suicide, and conservative fortress nations, tribal statism. It offers radical freedom and rational order. This analysis stands on first principles, reason, rights, reality. Implementation requires dismantling the immoral fiction of the redistributive state. Historical examples of significant welfare cuts, restrictions, or minimal welfare environments provide strong empirical support for the anarcho-capitalist objectivist claim. Removing coercive transfers realigns incentives, reduces dependency migration, boosts self-reliance, and supports productive integration without state distortion. True abolition is rare in modern nation states due to entrenched interests, but partial rollbacks, historical minimalism, and targeted restrictions illustrate the mechanism. 19th century United States, near minimum welfare plus mass migration, this stands as the closest real-world proxy to a low-welfare, high-immigration society under broadly classical liberal rules. Context, limited federal welfare, poor relief was mostly local, private charity, or almshouses. No comprehensive safety net. Immigration surged, millions from Europe amid industrialization and frontier expansion. Public charged exclusions existed, e.g. 1882 Immigration Act barring those unable to take care of self, but enforcement was light compared to today. Outcomes, high net economic contribution, immigrants filled labor needs, drove urban industrial growth, and assimilated rapidly via network markets and voluntary associations. Foreign-born share peaked near 15% with minimal fiscal drag. Wage growth and opportunity pulled productive migrants. Failures often return home. No large-scale welfare magnet. Economy boomed, property rights and contracts sorted people effectively. Algorist objectivist fit, clean incentives, no subsidy distortion, rational self-interest drove selection and simulation. This era refutes claims that high immigration requires welfare. It thrived because of its absence. Later progressive era expansions in 1920 quotas shifted by dynamics. 1996 U.S. welfare reform targeted restrictions on immigrants. The Personal Responsibility and Work Opportunity Reconciliation Act ended AFDC's entitlement, imposed work requirements, time limits, and barred most new legal immigrants from major federal benefits, Medicaid, food stamps, for 5+ years. Effects on immigration welfare use: immigrant welfare participation dropped sharply, e.g., 71% decline in some approvals in LA County. Many low-income immigrant households shifted to work over safety nets. Some return migration occurred during recessions. Overall, caseloads plummeted nationally. Poverty reductions accompanied caseload drops in reform-oriented states. Broader impacts demonstrated the magnet effect. Removing access reduced dependency inflows without full border closure. Boraz and other noted as a continuation of historical public charge logic. However, U.S.-born children of immigrants could still access benefits, limiting full effect. Limitations, not abolition. Reform within a welfare state. Political backlash and partial restorations followed. Still, it validates the incentive logic. Cut transfers, better sorting, and reduced fiscal burden. New Zealand, 1990s, euthanasia reforms. Under the 1990 national government, Financial Minister Ruth Richardson, deep welfare cuts, benefit rates slashed up to 25% in some cases, universal family benefit abolished, user pays for services, tighter eligibility, work expectations, and market rents for housing. Part of broader liberalization, deregulation, subsidy cuts. Outcomes: reduced dependency on long-term welfare roles, fiscal savings achieved, some labor market participation gains. Economy recovered from prior stagnation with growth in productivity as sectors. Critics noted short-term hardship, poverty spikes, but proponents highlighted breaking the poverty trap. Immigration context: New Zealand maintained points-based skilled migration, avoiding heavy low-skilled welfare pools post-reform. Relevance: closest modern example of aggressive rollback, showed political feasibility and incentive shifts. Agricultural subsidy abolition early boosted productivity dramatically. Analogous lessons for human welfare markets. Thatcher-era UK reforms, 1979-1990s, not abolition, but conditionally push. Benefits not fully indexed to wages, some cuts, tax on benefits, emphasis on self-reliance and privatization elements. Focus on reducing dependency culture. Outcomes: mixed. Unemployment rose initially, recession plus deindustrialization, keeping spending high as percentage of GDP. Long-term shifted norms toward work, later reforms built on this. Inequality rose, both growth resumed. Immigration debates intensified with welfare expansion. The lesson here: partial reforms yield partial results. Without full dismantling, bureaucracy and entitlements persist. Highlights: public choice problems, unemployment spikes, often savings. Other notes and precedents. Pre-welfare historical societies, medieval Iceland Commonwealth, near anarch polycentric law, private enforcement aspects of the American Old West showed voluntary order without central welfare. Migration settlement handled privately. No pure abolition. Modern states rarely eliminate welfare entirely due to democracy and interest groups. Experiments like workfare, block grants, or time limits consistently showed caseload drops and labor supply increases when rigorously applied. Counter patterns: post-1965 U.S. welfare expansion coincided with shifts in immigrant source countries and higher dependency metrics in some cohorts. European welfare magnets, high benefits, open access, correlate with integration challenges and fiscal strain. Synthesis and ANCAP objectivist algorist terms. These cases confirm the algorithmic prediction. Welfare creates a negative feedback loop: subsidy, dependency, migration, political demand for more transfer, taxes, controls. Removing or restricting it flips incentives toward productivity, private sponsorship, and self-selection. 19th century American proves scale is possible without distortion. 1996 and New Zealand show even incomplete cuts work in the predictive direction. Lower roles, more work, reduced magnet effect. Full abolition would amplify this. Private property, contract, reputation, insurance, and charity become the sorting mechanisms. Failures self-correct via market signals. No taxpayer bailout. Remaining problems, cultural friction, security, become solvable at the individual community level without rights violations. Partial reforms by entrenching the state. Radical elimination is the stable equilibrium. This history rejects both open welfare and fortress statism. Rational egoism plus property rights deliver emergent order. Thank you for listening, and see you in the next video.